Guys, it's Reed Young, aka Shuda here. I'm bringing you a hand review of a 1-2-6 max game where we're on the cutoff, it looks like, with King 10 offsuit. The hijack raises to just over 2.5 times the big blind, and we flat. I think that's a bit weak, usually, and especially because we got some players after us, or at least the big blind's a little bit short stack, so I'd expect him to be value squeezing with a wider range. You know, maybe he could get some hands in pre-flop like ace-jack suited and be pretty happy about it. So since we're going to be squeezed a little bit more often, the players after us could be confident. I don't really like flatting this wide here always. That said, there's definitely some table conditions where, you know, I think it's a fine play. Anyway, so we flat the cutoff, the button also calls, and the big blind calls. So we've got a four-handed pot going to the flop, and we flop a gutter with a backdoor flush draw, and we have the nut backdoor flush draw. So it checks to us, and we decide to check, which I'm not sure I'm in love with that really either. If you're going to be semi-bluffing, it's kind of nice to have a nut blocker for the turn if your draw does get there, or the draw that it appears as if you have gets there. So, you know, the important thing is if the flush draw does hit the turn, then we can represent the nuts and no one else can, since we have the lone king of spades. And our range is just going to be really strong for betting twice if we construct it properly. So as long as you don't go too crazy with it, I think it's a fine spot to stab on the flop. And expect, you know, most people's ranges to be capped around ace-jack or so. On the turn, it checks to us again, and we have a straight with a nut flush redraw, which is pretty sweet. We obviously bet for value, and the button folds, the big blind raises us, which, you know, all of a sudden we have a bluff catcher now. You know, almost certainly. I don't see anyone playing 10-8 this way, especially with how draw heavy the boards become and, you know, multi-way. So we call, and we essentially get shoved into on the river here. Well, you know, it's a pot-sized bet, and the question is, should we be calling or should we be folding? You know, I think this should be a fold, and the reasons I'm giving are because we block a lot of the big blind's semi-bluff raising range on the turn. And by that, I mean, if he's going to be check raising us as a semi-bluff, you know, the best hand he could choose would be something that has the king of spades in it. So since we have the king of spades, that's going to make his range a bit stronger. Especially if he can check raise for thinner value here, expecting us to have straights and two pairs. You know, this is looking even more like a fold. And just not that many people at 1-2 go ridiculous with multi-way turn check raise bluffs. So from an exploitive point of view, I think we can tighten up our calling range just a tad. And I mentioned actually in the thread that I'd probably about always call with a baby flush here, something like 4-5 suited if we had it, 4-5 of spades. And I think you could fold this hand, and just because it's going to be toward the bottom of our range to get to the river this way. Obviously, we could have some hands like, you know, king of diamonds and whatever. If we try to get cute pre-flop, maybe. If you really think about it, there just aren't too many worse hands that we could have that would call the turn pretty happily and then get to the river like this. So I think laying this one down is fine, and calling with slightly better hands that don't block our opponent's value range is the way to go. So if you guys are liking these videos, I'd appreciate hitting the like button and sharing it with a poker buddy, and I'll see you guys next time.